Hi, welcome to another edition of Jonathan Maberry Answers Stuff. Today I'm talking about short stories. Now, understand, I am primarily a novelist these days. I was a nonfiction guy, then I started writing novels, and novels are kind of what I fell in love with when I decided to do fiction. So I never really had any intention of doing short stories, and then Kim Paffenroth invited me to do a short for an anthology of zombie stories he was putting together called History is Dead. And I wound up writing not only a historical zombie story, but a comedy historical zombie story, which, I'm like, where did that come from? And since then, I've written stories, several bunches of them, actually, more than 100 now, I think, for all sorts of anthologies. Some are themed anthologies, like I've done a John Carter of Mars story, a couple of Sherlock Holmes stories, I've done an Oz story. I've done, things for different types of themed anthologies. And I've also done a lot of standalone stuff. Some tied to my novels, like standalone short stories tied to some of my novels, and some completely independent, like St. John, which was not intended to be tied to the Rotten Ruin when it was written, but later became attached, and a few others. Now, my thing about short stories is they allow for a lot of creative freedom that novels don't have. You can take creative risks with a short form that you can't take with a novel, because a novel, it's a big chunk of your career. It's more costly to produce and market and so on. Short story is one of a bunch. So if you misfire, and we hope you never do, it's that one experiment that didn't work. But more often than not, what I find is when people take that imaginative and creative leap, when they try something different, they actually do something pretty extraordinary. And it's one of the reasons I love writing short stories. And this week, several of my short stories came out in my first print collection, but it also allows me to gather short stories as an editor. So I went from being someone who didn't want to write short stories to writing one for an editor and then doing a bunch of them, and now I'm editing anthologies myself. My latest is Out of Tune, which is all dark fantasy and horror short stories inspired by murder ballads and folk songs. The editor in me is having a lot of fun with this, because I can kind of create a framework and then invite people in. I also do that with shared world short stories, like V-Wars, where I write a framing story and then I have different writers write the individual stories. There's so many different ways you can play in this world. I did a short story for a Planet of the Apes anthology, in which I wrote basically a political discourse between an orangutan and a gorilla in an anthology. I would never have had the opportunity to write that story. The Oz story I wrote, it was about a little winged monkey girl whose wings were too small for her to fly, so she has to find magic traveling shoes. And believe me, that's not the first idea that came to my head. It's just the one that felt like it was the right thing to do. And it actually wound up being part of the official Oz chronology, according to the Balm estate, which freaked me out. Big career high. Short stories are fun to write too, because I usually start with the ending and then I back up and aim at that ending. So I know where it's going to go, and then I want to race to see how fast I can get to that ending and how much fun and weird things I can do along the way. Right now I write, as I've said in previous videos, 4 to 6 novels a year, but I also write about 20 to 25 short stories a year, and every one of them is fun in a different weird way. For those of you who are readers, short stories, either in collections or anthologies, allow you to see writers who are stretching beyond their normal limits. In anthologies, you get to discover bunches of new writers. For writers, it's a way for you to grow. It's a great way to step into new markets, and it's a way for you to get your name out there. So I'm a big fan of short stories. I hope you guys love reading short stories, because my writer friends and I have a whole bunch of weird, wonderful things coming your way. Okay, thanks.